class. All right, thinking about yesterday and our characters, we have Robert, Mom, and then the narrator, who is Amy Tan. So when it says I, that's who it's referring to. And remember that characteristic is personality, an internal characteristic. So thinking about Robert, okay, what's he like? At the beginning, he is compared to Jesus, right? We talked about that because it says in the first paragraph that, like Mary with the baby in the manger, right? And we talked about how because he's a minister's son and he's being compared to Jesus, which was accepting, by showing here that he grimaced and that he's rude, it's changing our perception of Robert. And that now we don't look at Robert the same way. We look at him as this guy that's not to be looked up to. It also makes us feel not as bad, right? Because we looked at what Amy Tan did as like, what she did was really shameful. But now it makes us have empathy for Tan rather than disgust, okay? Because we can understand why she was embarrassed for her family, but the fact that he treated her family this way is like, okay, Amy, we kind of understand your side of the story as to why you were acting the way that you were. You wanted to impress someone who was acting like he was in this horrible place. Do you understand a little bit better when I say characteristic, line from the text, and how it affects it? That makes sense now? Okay. All right, let's try Mom. All right, remember that how it affects the text is always how it changes the text itself and our understanding of it. So it's going to typically be like a literary device. So the mom is definitely wise and caring, and you found two good lines. She handed her an early gift, and she cooked her favorite foods. And when it did that, it showed us just how much her mom cared, which Amy did not really view at the beginning. She kind of thought her mom was embarrassing. And then at the beginning, she really felt like her mom was embarrassing her. So the conflict was more between Amy and her mom. And then at the end, when we realized that she cooked her favorite foods, we realized how it changed the text is that it shifted the conflict from mom to Amy and herself. Okay, so the literary element that is affecting the text is conflict. And so I can see we're struggling a little bit with how it affects the text, so we'll keep practicing. Okay, so the narrator, I think for skeptical, I think we're going to say that that's a maybe. We don't really have enough to look at. But I definitely think that a characteristic of hers is that she always wants to fit in. And the line that you chose is very good, that she wants to be the same as Americans in the paragraph 7. And absolutely, tone at the beginning is embarrassed / kind of sad. And then once mom does that, it definitely changes it to supportive and uplifting. Okay, does that help you a little bit with how it affects the text? So for those that did it on Amplify, they typed in their answers. We answered these as we read. So you wrote on there that we did it as we read aloud so that I remember when it comes to grading. Okay. And then what we talked about yesterday was that she was Chinese American, okay, and that was a problem. And we also talked yesterday about how shabby Chinese Christmas and the manners and how that caused problems with how she was embarrassed. We talked about how Robert didn't exist, being rude. We talked about the line, she wanted to disappear, and that she was silent the rest of the night. So we did hit all of this yesterday. How the narrator portrays Robert, we talked about how he was this perfect guy, similar to Jesus with that comparison, that simile in the first paragraph. And then we talked about how he was rude. We did miss this one. It does say in there that he patiently waited for the food, so that tells us that he does have some of those characteristics of a minister's family, trying to be patient and caring. And then we talked about the burping And we talked about the grimacing. So we only missed that one yesterday when we read. Okay, in Amplify, on card 36, or A36, card 2, has Amy been feeling shame, and how can you tell? One of the things I've noticed as I've gone through and graded is you're not really answering all of the questions. So I have this slide to kind of help you. And it's called Races, and races, like you're running. Race, like that race.
Okay.
And it's an acronym. And I think that it will help you understand how to write these paragraphs. So, what does it mean? R means to restate the question. A means to answer the question. C, cite evidence. E, to expand or explain. And then the S is sum it up. And if you look at this as a race, you're running in a race, someone's beside you and you want to win, then it needs to be clear that you're going to win. It needs to be clear your technique. All right, so the prompt, and we did this prompt last time. Describe a moment in time that stands out to you. Notice that I highlighted the key words. And that's what you want to do every time you get a prompt. You need to ask yourself, what does this want me to write about? Because if you don't ask yourself this, you're going to get off topic. Okay? All right, once you figure that out, you're going to look at your first sentence, your R. A moment in time that stands out to me is, I am answering the question because I have copied the prompt from there to my first sentence. Okay? And then what's the answer? The day my kids were born. And that is the answer to the question. What stands out at you? The day my kids were born. Okay? And that is your first sentence. I have to completely answer the question. So this sentence kind of ties to this one. When I broke it up, I put it in two separate sentences just to show you the A, but typically I would have put this in the same sentence. And you may do that in your writing. Sometimes your R and your A may be the same sentence. Okay, but you completely answer the question. Why did it stand out to me? This day was amazing because I saw what a real life miracle was. That is why it stood out to me. So I've answered the question. But now I have to do my C, which is evidence. If you're reading a story, it's not a big deal. You can do what we just did. You can go to the text and you can copy a line. The problem is that a lot of these prompts we've been doing are not about stories. They're about things that you've seen or your life. So you still have to have the example, and that's the part you're leaving out. So I have to go back and I have to choose a fact. Okay, you have to choose a fact. Why was this so amazing? Why was it a real life miracle? So my evidence, they were 6 weeks early. And as they laid in the incubators in the NIC unit, they curled their little hands around my fingers and turned their heads at the sound of my voice. That's a fact. The problem is, you don't know how that supports my answer. Okay? That's just a random fact about when the boys were born. Okay? And I am saying that they were a miracle. So now I have to do my E, which is explain how that fact is answering the question. They were alive and healthy in a way the doctors and I didn't know for sure would be possible. Okay? Because the doctor said that it was not going to happen. Okay? I would be lucky if one of them survived, and they were both completely healthy. They turned their head at my voice. That's a miracle to me. You see how I took that explanation to make it clear to the reader? And then your S, you have to sum it up. Because it was so difficult to carry the boys and their... I love spell check except for when it messes with my theirs. There was doubt. They would both survive. The moment. Notice I've brought in the last sentence, the word from the prompt. I saw they were both alive and healthy. Stands out as one of the most amazing And there's my answer. Amazing. Times in my life. So your last sentence is going to use a word from the prompt and a word from your answer. And it's all nice and tight that way. Does that make sense? Okay. So in Amplify, I want you to answer A36, card number 2. Okay. And I'm going to give you 8 minutes for that. So go ahead and go to Amplify and do that now. So the story of Gordon is similar in theme, and it is similar in story structure. So we're going to look at that. So you've got the shame and the guilt, and even the time period is the same. As we read, you're going to annotate this just like it would be if it was in your textbook. And those are the things I want you to look for. Same thing we did yesterday. Vocabulary you don't know. Okay, so you'll circle those. And there are some in here. I went through and I found some synonyms for the really hard ones. But for some of them, I couldn't find a synonym that kept the tone. Okay? And so I had to leave the original word. And then I want you to note, just like we talked about yesterday, the conflict. And just like yesterday, if you find something that deals with shame, then you would mark that too. All right, so let's go ahead and read this.